Hello folks, welcome to another class. This one is Weird Fruit and Veggies. So this is an exercise in using secondary colors to learn about the secondary colors. It is very, very odd, and that's why all of these fruit and veggies are probably going to look a little strange, so we're going to have to be creative. What I have here is some images of other artworks that have made weird colored fruit or vegetables. So look closely at the colors that they're using and just notice how much it pops. There's a lot of color even though it's the wrong colors. It's not wrong, it's art. So you decide what kind of crazy colors you want to use in your plan. And you're going to need a fruit or veggie or two or three from your kitchen. Whatever you can find is okay. I brought out a lot of things to choose from, but I ended up with tomatoes and garlic. The things you're going to want for your project is your fruit or vegetables. You want something to cover your table, a cup of water, your brushes, canvas, your paper and pencil or sketchbook, your palette or paper plate, paints, and a paper towel to dry your brushes between washes, and then your found textures. Now there's aluminum foil, plastic wrap, bottle caps, plastic forks. Any of these things are going to be great textures at the end when we're doing backgrounds and textures on top of what we made. So that comes later. For now, I want you to start sketching out your plan. So I set up my still life right in front of me. I put my tomatoes on a paper plate, and I actually like the color of the paper plate because it was teal, and I have that color in my palette. So I put my tomatoes on the plate, propped them up actually from behind, which is a Cezanne trick, and then I put the garlic next to it because I felt like that would create balance in my composition. So then once I kind of sketched out, and remember, just make this a quick sketch. You are practicing how to set up your still life, but you don't need to spend too much time on this part. When I sketched out my idea, I also sketched out my color plan. The colors that you guys have are kind of weird, aren't they? They are only secondary colors. So the primary colors are red, blue, and yellow. And you can make all sorts of colors of the rainbow with those primary colors. But you only have secondary colors, which is blue and yellow put together, that's green. Yellow and red put together, which is orange. Red and blue put together, which is purple, but I actually gave you a red violet because you can actually make purple with your red, violet, and teal. Okay, so when you finish your sketch and your plan, you're going to draw it out on your canvas. When you're all done with that, drawing it out, then you're going to start painting by blocking in. Blocking in is keeping it very simple, not putting in a lot of detail, just doing your first layer of painting. So when I started with my tomatoes, and I started by making it just a red-orange color. You guys should experiment taking a tiny bit of paint and mixing to see what colors are made when you mix these secondary colors. When I mix red-violet with orange, it does create kind of an orange-pink color if I add white to it. And then if I mix together orange and teal, it kind of makes a brown color. If I mix teal and lime green, it stays very similar. It's still kind of a blue-green color. And if I mix red with teal, it makes a slight purple color. So of those secondary colors that we have, I used orange and red-violet to sort of come up with a tomato color. But I could have done green tomatoes, no problem, using my lime green and teal. When you guys experiment mixing together, you can use color to create shadows. You guys don't have to have brown or black to create shadows. What? I know, it's crazy. So what I did to create shadows was purple. Purple was my red violet mixed with my teal color. And I used that for basically all of my shadows. And then for all of my highlights, I used white mixed with a little bit of lime green because it was kind of acting like yellow. And I knew that if I do a little bit of color in my highlights, they'll stand out even more. So you guys can try that too. Colorful shadows look better than gray, black shadows or brown shadows. And I think you're going to figure that out when you work on this project. It's very fun to create colorful shadows. I made a purple color for my shadows. You could also make a brown color for shadows using orange and the teal, but it's not very dark. You can also make red shadows, just straight red with a little bit of white. That's fine too. You guys just figure out what's gonna look good for your picture and try it out. And then for my garlic, I wasn't gonna do just white because garlic, it does kind of look like just white. Instead, I decided I would make it lime green and then have some white textures on top of it. So I made my garlic with green, I added white to it. There is a lot of freedom here. You can go crazy with these colors. They're very bright and very fun to paint with. So I'm making my tomatoes warm. The vine is cool, so I'm using teal. The shadows are cool, and my plate is cool colors. With all of those cool colors, I was like, okay, maybe my background needs to be warm. I wanted a brand new color. I haven't used much pink, so I decided I would go with kind of some warm pink colors since I have a lot of cool colors. When you are finished painting your whole table or surface, whatever background you've picked out, you can start to test out these textures. So I went with my pink table and then I got out my aluminum foil and I started to paint the aluminum foil and dabbed it around to see what kind of textures it created. Then I took a little bit of plastic wrap that I had and I painted first, dabbed the plastic wrap onto the wet paint and pulled it up, and I could see all these interesting wrinkles in it. I went back to the aluminum foil because that was my favorite, and I just kept dabbing around to create my red-orange background, and I made it really, really dark. I then wanted to texturize my table, so I started by adding some big paint strokes of orange, and I tested out my plastic wrap again and just kind of dabbed around with paint. And I liked the white so much that I decided I would try out something crazy. So if you want to do what I'm about to do, you need to first make sure that the paint is dry. So I made sure that my pink table was all dry. First I went ahead and made some mistakes really quick and then undid my mistakes with a paper towel. That's one of the good tricks if your painting is dry before you do this. I started to dab some green into my red background and waited for my pink table to dry. So once my pink table was all dry and I finished up in my background, I painted the whole thing white. And the reason why I did that was because I want to reveal the pink table. So I covered the whole thing with white paint as fast as I could because it needs to stay really wet. You can always add water to help it stay wet longer. And then I came in with my fork and I scraped out a design into the table using my fork. So it reveals the pink underneath and it looks very, very cool. So you definitely want to make sure the first layer is dry before you add the wet layer of paint and scrape it off. After I did that, I got my bottle cap and I did some stamps with my bottle cap. So I painted onto the bottle cap a little bit and stamped lime green circles into the background. So I can't wait to see what you guys do. If you find a different texture in your house that you want to use, that you're allowed to use for this, Just make sure that you clean off the object if it needs to be cleaned afterwards. And just experiment. See what kind of cool textures can come out of this project for you. When you're all done, scoop up leftover paints back into their containers if you can reuse them, and then put those containers back in their Ziploc bag. Then you want to throw out your palette and clean your brushes with clean water until there's no leftover paint in the brush. So I would clean it out with clean water and push the brush on your hand to see if there's no more paint left in it. And once you've cleaned everything up, put your painting somewhere safe to dry. I hope you guys enjoyed this project and you know a little bit more about secondary colors than you did before. And I can't wait to see what you made.